63-59. That was the score the last time Tennessee and South Carolina met at the Food City Center. Why tonight is going to be different, and Tennessee is going to lock up that number 1 seed in the SEC tournament. It's your Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome into your Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. It's also a crossover edition with Locked On Gamecocks. Host Andrew Lyons with me here today. We're going to do segments 1 and 2, previewing everything that is Tennessee and South Carolina. A lot is at stake here, and can't wait to dive into this matchup. Of course, it's a free listen, watch, subscription, and download wherever you watch your podcasts on YouTube, Locked On Vols and Locked On Gamecocks. And of course, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your podcasts as well. Shout out everydayers, and thanks so much for making Locked On Vols and today Locked On Gamecocks as well your first listen. Andrew, let's dive into it, man. This is a huge matchup. Both teams looking to win the SEC. With a win tonight, Tennessee can lock up at least a share of the SEC title, and I know there's scenarios for South Carolina as well. It feels like there's not a bigger rematch in SEC play this year with as much on the line as maybe tonight in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah, Eric, I completely agree with you. Tennessee, I know, has played a brutal stretch to end the regular season. I know they played the Alabama Crimson Tide this past Saturday, which was also a big game for those two teams, the Vols coming out on top. South Carolina, kind of the team that's been the most overlooked, weirdly enough, in the SEC, despite the fact they're 24-5 and sit here with a shot to at least, like you said, win a share of the SEC regular season title. Head coach Lamont Paris has done a tremendous job with this basketball program and sort of changing the perception, the image of this basketball program in a very, very short time frame. So I have no doubt that when this game takes place later tonight, it is going to be a closely contested battle between the Volunteers and the Gamecocks. I think that this is going to be a good one that's going to treat all the fans there in attendance.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what do you expect the environment to be like tonight? Again, and I would agree with you. I think South Carolina is the most overlooked team in the SEC this year because Tennessee is a mainstay under Rick Barnes, because Kentucky's Kentucky, because Auburn and Bruce Pearl is Auburn and Bruce Pearl, and so on and so forth. But all Lamont Paris has done is just win. And I said on the show the other day, he's the SEC Coach of the Year, probably the National Coach of the Year. Feels like South Carolina's got a chip on their shoulder, but having already won this game in Knoxville, you're playing at home tonight. I feel like the environment is going to be really, really good tonight. It's going to be a challenge again for Tennessee.
Yeah, Eric, no question about that. South Carolina, the school as of right now is on spring break. So some fans might sit there and expect, well, maybe the crowd will be a little bit less than it otherwise would be. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the Colonial Life Arena is going to be packed. The capacity for the arena is about 18,000 strong. Personally, I think that's a bit too big, but obviously when you can fill it up with your home fans, it can certainly make for an imposing environment. The Florida Gators found out the hard way this past Saturday, what was a very good game against Todd Golden's squad. And I think that the crowd can play a factor in this game. I know that Rick Barnes obviously has been around the block several times as a head coach, and this team for Tennessee is quite experienced with the players that they've got. But I think that South Carolina, they've got to have a sort of a confident feeling going into this game, because you mentioned earlier, they defeated Tennessee in Knoxville earlier this season. Almost nobody finds a way to do that against Rick Barnes' team. And it feels like that from a matchup standpoint, from a stylistic standpoint, as I'm sure we can get into maybe later on the show, that South Carolina is a team that can match up against Tennessee because they'll slow the pace down and, force the Volunteers to have to play half-court basketball. And I know that Tennessee, they like to have their moments where they can run the floor on the fast break in transition. So I think that everything about this matchup in terms of the veterans both teams have, the kind of coaches that both teams have, and also the styles, and you throw in a championship on top of that, it makes this matchup way more intriguing than I think anybody would have thought it would be before the season began.
I think there's no doubt about it. The most electrifying and most popular player, especially in the eyes of the national media now who are starting to come around in this ball game, is going to be Dalton Knecht. Dalton Knecht did not play Superman at Alabama on Saturday night. He was very much a Robin to a couple of other guys. He had a tough night shooting, but 6 times this year he's gone for over 30 points. 5 times he's gone for 35 plus. He's been incredible, man. He's going to be unanimous All-American. He should 100% be in the National Player of the Year conversation, in my opinion. He's going to be the SEC Player of the Year. What is the having said all that, what is the strategy for South Carolina to stopping Dalton Knecht? Is it shut him out and take your chances with anybody else? Is it let him get his but shut everybody else out? Kind of how should South Carolina defend Dalton Knecht here tonight?
Well, Eric, that definitely is an interesting question. I think it's always a good question whenever you look at a matchup like this, because it's always, you got 2 options. You can either try to shut down the star player and account for pretty much him and make everybody else beat you, or you could just go ahead and say, go ahead, go into takeover mode. See if you could do it for 40 minutes in our arena. I don't know how Lamont Paris is exactly going to go about it. I would venture to guess, though, that he's not going to change his defensive strategies too much, despite how good Dalton Knecht can be. Lamont Paris, as a coach, he is defensive-minded. He pretty much is a guy that really he emphasizes the fundamentals of basketball. And so defensively, that pretty much means don't do stupid little things that are going to get you beat off the dribble and allow your guy to drive just straight to the basket. Don't do something that's going to send the whole defense into a scramble drill, because that's where opponents, especially like Tennessee, can get you with guys like Zakai Zeigler on the perimeter and also a Santiago Vescovi, who obviously it feels like has been there now and gotten 2 doctorate degrees. He's been playing so long for this league. So I think that for the Gamecocks, you'll probably see them play man-to-man and just basically tell Dalton Knecht again, hey, you want to win this game tonight? Fine. You got to score about 30 points if you want to beat us. And I'm definitely not going to sit here and say they're going to stop him. I don't think really anyone has stopped him. Alabama might have been an exception this past weekend, but I think that Knecht's still going to get his points, but South Carolina is going to lean enough on the rest of their guys to do their job that he's going to have to play, pretty efficient basketball on the offensive end if the Volunteers want to walk out of the Colonial Life Arena with the win later tonight.
Should be a good one. We're going to continue to dive into the matchup. If Tennessee needs to win, what does Tennessee need to do outside of Dalton Knecht? That and a whole lot more. It's coming up next as we continue on with this crossover edition. It's Locked On Vols and Locked On Gamecocks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry about buying those tickets to the next big event. I'm not talking just sporting events like Tennessee and South Carolina. I'm talking about concerts. I'm talking about PBR at the Food City Center this past weekend. I'm talking about concerts. It feels like every time I'm driving on campus, at least here in Knoxville, Tennessee, man, there's something going on over there at the Food City Center, and you can buy tickets to anything, any event in the area, the Food City Center, the Bijou Theater, the Tennessee Theater, Lindsey Nelson Stadium, and of course Neyland Stadium, and in Columbia, South Carolina as well, by downloading the Game Time app and checking out those killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets as well. It's got the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, even job loss protection as well, and you get to see your seat. They're going to show you your seat so you know exactly what you're paying for right up front. It's the place for procrastinators to buy their tickets, staying open until even an hour after the event starts over there on the Game Time app. Download Game Time app today, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, encourage you to create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. More of Locked On Crossover, Locked On Vols and Gamecocks. That is coming up next. All right, we continue on here with Eric Kane of Locked On Vols, Andrew Lyons of Locked On Gamecocks, Locked On South Carolina Gamecocks, and getting you set for a big-time showdown in Columbia, South Carolina here tonight, Tennessee, and the Gamecocks. So, talked about Dalton Knecht there a little bit in segment number 1. You mentioned, Santiago Vescovi and, Zakai Zeigler and Josiah Jordan-James. I think the biggest testament to this Rick Barnes team is, last year and years past when you've been searching for offense, it's been Vescovi, it's been James, it's been Zeigler, This year you have a Batman, and that is Dalton Knecht. And Santiago Vescovi is, taking a huge step back, but his defense has improved. His rebounding's improved. He's still playing a viable part for this offense. Zakai Zeigler, one of the best point guards in the country, in my opinion. And Josiah Jordan-James, the versatility factor, he had to play the 5 a little bit at times at Coleman Coliseum last weekend because of foul trouble with the bigs. And I think those veterans changing their roles are a reason why Tennessee's been so successful this year, of course, with the addition of Dalton Knecht. So I'll be intrigued to see kind of what this looks like. I asked you about stopping a guy like Dalton Knecht. When you have a guy like Jonas Adu, who has put up several double-doubles so far this year, and capable of being an all-SEC type player, how challenging is that if Adu is on in the front court to defend both Adu and Dalton Knecht, for a stretch in this basketball game?
Well, I think that if South Carolina has a hard time defending Jonas Adu, what that's going to do for the Volunteers, Eric, I'm just going to take a guess, is I would say that it will open up the pick and roll game at the top of the key. That is an area where South Carolina defensively at times has struggled against their opponents. There's not very many areas where they do struggle, but I would say that area is one of them. Particularly a BJ Mack. I would say that a Colin Murray Boyles, who's a true freshman for South Carolina's basketball team, he's going to be all right because Colin Murray Boyles is a future NBA player. He's gotten some double-doubles in his own right. He started off the season with mononucleosis, so it wasn't until about 4 or 5 games of the SEC play before he really got things going again. But for the Gamecocks, I certainly think that with the perimeter shooting ability that the Volunteers do possess in this starting lineup, you cannot allow this team to play inside out. You do have to make sure that you shut down Jonas Adu and Josiah Jordan-James and anybody else in that front court that tries to go at the basket, because if you can't, then that's going to potentially turn this game into more of a track meet, and that's not the kind of game that South Carolina wants to play. South Carolina, again, wants to slow things down, be methodical on both ends of the floor, and want to make this sort of like a 70 to 60-something kind of game, which is right down their alley. Close game. They can play that kind of game in their home arena, but I don't think they want to go down, double digits, 10-plus points. They were able to get away with it this past Saturday against Florida, but they haven't been able to do that often this season. So I'm not going to all of a sudden sit here and say they can do it 2 games in a row against this time a top 5 team, the Tennessee Volunteers. So I certainly do think that is very important for the Gamecocks defensively later tonight.
So you've kind of gone into it a little bit, defensively and defending Dalton Knecht, and a little bit right there offensively. But offensively, what's the game plan? What's the game plan tonight, in your opinion? I know you're not in those meetings for South Carolina in trying to attack Tennessee and trying to score more points in Tennessee when it's all said and done.
Yeah, Eric, I think the game plan. I don't want to sound too generic when I say this, but I think the game plan is going to basically just be play South Carolina basketball. And what that means offensively is do not play isolation basketball. You look at a team like Kentucky, for example, you got a Robert Dillingham on that squad, an Austin Reeves. Guys are going to play in the NBA one day. And those guys, they can play 1-on-5 basketball and they can make plays happen. South Carolina does not have many guys like that. The one guy that you could probably point to and say can play that way a little bit is Meechie Johnson, but he can also be very cold depending on the day that he has. So for the Gamecocks offensively, they're going to look to swing the basketball around the perimeter. They want to share the basketball. They want to sort of keep the defense moving. And the thing is, it's a different kind of fatigue with the way South Carolina operates offensively, because when we talk basketball, we always talk about the physicality and the battle on the interior. But for South Carolina, because of how long these possessions play out, that can create a mental fatigue for their opponent, because it can make you a lot more antsy. It keeps you on your toes. You don't know what's going to happen next. And sometimes maybe if you like to play a track meet like Tennessee does at times, you might even get a little bit impatient. And South Carolina tries to capitalize on that when they can. So you'll see them take some last-second shots sometimes with like 2 seconds left on the shot clock. And if they're making their shots, then it can really just be a dagger in the heart of their opponent, especially in a close game like it was in Knoxville just a few weeks back. So the Gamecocks, they're going to look to play their brand of basketball. If Tennessee forces South Carolina to play more one-on-one, then the Volunteer fan base should feel like that there's a much better shot of winning this game, because South Carolina, when they have gotten in those kind of stretches in some of these games, their offense just drops off a cliff. Because like I mentioned, they don't have many shot creators and difference makers that are of that capability besides Meechie Johnson. So that should be what you should watch for South Carolina's offense when going up against this Volunteers defense.
Yeah, and really the only guy that would ever play ISO basketball for Tennessee in the half court is Dalton Knecht. And it's not often that he does it, but, when he's on a roll, he'll tell everybody to clear out and he'll go to work. But, nobody else really does that for Tennessee. And as far as defensively, you're talking about obviously one of the best defensive teams in the country. And, you don't play for Rick Barnes unless you're going to play defense. And Zakai Zeigler, Santiago Vescovi, Jemai Meshack, the versatility to guard the bigs, to guard the, guards in the backcourt. I think Tennessee will do anything they can to harass the half-court play if you're going to take down the shot clock and try to waste time that way a little bit. Tennessee's won a lot of games in a rock fight, not necessarily this season, but under Rick Barnes, Tennessee can win those rock fights, and hopefully it's not a rock fight tonight because I think we want to see a good basketball game, but either way we spend it. If your team, if South Carolina wins, your listeners will be happy. If Tennessee wins, my listeners will be happy. Hey, anything else on the game that you want to ask me in terms of Tennessee? If not, I wanted to ask a couple of football questions before we say goodbye.
Yeah, okay. I guess, Eric, I'll just go ahead and ask, we haven't given a prediction yet. So what do you think is going to happen this game? Do you think that Tennessee is going to get revenge on South Carolina, or do you think that this one is one that just kind of comes up short for the Volunteers at the end of the day?
I mean, Tennessee's capable of winning every single game on its schedule. It's capable of beating every single team in the country. However, it's not how basketball works. And sooner or later, I mean, Tennessee, this 2-week stretch you referenced earlier, I mean, it was at Auburn, or it was Auburn at home last Wednesday night, at Alabama, at South Carolina tonight, and then at home against Kentucky. Nobody in the country is playing that schedule to end the season. And so you've had 2 emotional wins, come from behind win at Coleman Coliseum. I mean, sooner or later, Tennessee's going to be tired. And I'm not saying Tennessee won't be able to get amped up. I mean, you're playing for an SEC title now. I get that. But I wonder when there's going to be that slip up. And I don't know. Hopefully it's not tonight. So, I'll pick Tennessee to win. There's no reason for me not to pick Tennessee to win the way that Dalton Knecht's playing this year and the way Tennessee's been playing the last week or so. I'd be foolish not to say Tennessee's going to win. But if Tennessee were to lose this game on the road, it wouldn't be shocking because obviously South Carolina's a good team and you are playing at home. Now, somebody asked me earlier for Twitter Tuesday, more impressive when winning on the road at South Carolina this week or winning at home at Kentucky for Tennessee. And Kentucky's got more NBA players than anybody. We know about that. Kentucky's an amazing offensive team in the country, but winning on the road at South Carolina, I think, would be even more impressive this week. So we'll see what happens. I don't have a score prediction like we're going to do with football, but I'll pick Tennessee to win. I'll pick Tennessee to win by 4. I'll pick Tennessee to win by 4, and I think it'll be one of those tough, contested basketball games. What say you? What do you think about tonight, how it's going to go?
Yeah, Eric, I'm pretty much right there with you in terms of like the final point margin. Again, I don't think either team runs away with it. If either team does, I think it is definitely an impressive win for that squad. But I think that South Carolina probably gets this, 74-69, I'll say. I will tell you this. Here's a fun fact for you going into this game. Only 2 times this season has South Carolina allowed their opponent to score 70 or more points, and the Gamecocks still came out on top. That's been the magic number. So if South Carolina holds you to under 70, the Gamecocks feel extremely confident they're going to come out winning. But if the Volunteers score 70 plus, then your odds of winning just go through the roof more than likely. So that's going to be sort of the magic number for Volunteer fans to pay attention to, and Gamecock fans also going into this game.
It's good news for Tennessee that is much improved on the offensive end this year compared to years past at points in times. Should be a great one. Can't wait to watch it. Out the door, man. Tell me a little bit about South Carolina quickly. Spring practice. I would assume you guys are going to start, after spring break here in about a week or 2. What's kind of the main storylines for South Carolina at spring practice for Shane Beamer this year?
I think the main storyline, Eric, is there's a lot of new faces for this team. South Carolina was a team that dove heavily into the transfer portal this offseason. Obviously, you get Raheem Rocket Sanders out of Arkansas. Don't think he's going to practice too much in spring ball. One, he's a veteran. Quite frankly, he doesn't need to go through many spring ball practices, but also he's dealing with a bit of procedure he got on one of his shoulders a month or 2 back. So they're going to be a bit cautious with that, make sure that he gets healthy again before they just throw him right out there into this offense. Lenore Sellers, redshirt freshman, just like kind of Nico with Tennessee. Gamecock fans have been waiting for Lenoris to take over the quarterback position, and he's the starter, I would say, as of right now, going into spring ball. So how does he look, now being the guy manning this offense? And this staff, I mean, there are multiple new faces on this staff. I think South Carolina's got a new special teams coordinator, which is a big deal for Shane Beamer because of how much he puts an emphasis on special teams. New wide receivers coach, new running backs coach, new tight ends coach. Offensively, a lot of new faces. Defensively, the unit that kind of held you back last year, I don't think anybody left. So, how does that play out for Shane Beamer? If the defense looks bad again, dare I say, that could be his downfall in Columbia. So, he's taken a couple gambles. James Coley going to Georgia. I know some SEC fans have their opinions on what he said about that this past Friday. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting no matter what happens in Columbia this offseason, Eric. That I can guarantee you that.
Yep, no doubt about it. SEC expansion, new era of college football. You gotta love where we're at in college football in terms of year-round entertainment. But tonight, it is basketball entertainment. Tennessee at South Carolina. We will see if the Gamecocks can pull off the season sweep of the number 4 team in the country, or if Tennessee can continue riding this high of this last 2 weeks of the regular season and win another emotional win at South Carolina to split the season series with the Gamecocks. We'll find out, and of course, we'll recap it all in Locked On Vols and Locked On Gamecocks tomorrow with Eric Kane and Andrew Lyon. Andrew, appreciate it as always, man, and we'll see what happens, and we'll talk more football in the spring, okay?
Absolutely, Eric. Thanks for having me.
I want to tell you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophies? Also, what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you are looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money is back. Because of eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP right now and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive today. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. More to come on Locked On Vols when we return. Ward Wednesday time here on Locked On Vols. Josh Ward joins the show, co-host of 99.1 The Sports Animals, Josh and Swain, with VFL Jason Swain. Josh, what's going on, buddy?
Well, a lot. Tennessee fans continue to have a lot to pull for to keep up with, so it's a good time right now.
Yeah, it's a really good time, and what should be a really good game coming up tonight for Tennessee and South Carolina. For it to go differently in round 2, what needs to change for Tennessee compared to the first go-around?
Well, with the way Tennessee has played recently, I would say continuing to take care of the basketball, not turning it over at Alabama, forcing some on the other side was a big deal in that game. If Tennessee's able to go on the road in this game against South Carolina, continue to take better care of the basketball, then I think the other things that need to follow and improve from the previous game are more likely to do so. Tennessee missed some gimme shots in the previous game against South Carolina. If Tennessee can be more efficient around the basket, do well enough shooting the basketball from the outside, then I think they should be able to outscore South Carolina. Need to do all the other little things, control the glass, make sure South Carolina is not getting second chance opportunities. South Carolina is going into this game thinking, hey, we've beaten them once. Let's beat them again on our home court and go win an SEC championship. That's what's on the line for South Carolina this week as well. Tennessee and South Carolina are playing for the same things within the conference. So Tennessee, I think, is the better team, but it wasn't the last time these two teams played. So if the Vols do the little things, they will show that they're better than South Carolina.
Yep, a lot on the line tonight. And again, if Tennessee wins one of the final 2 games, it wins at least a share of the regular season title for the Southeastern Conference. And it starts tonight at South Carolina, then coming back home against Kentucky on Saturday. Let's look back at that game against Alabama. 2 teams that were tied atop the league standings on Saturday. Coleman Coliseum, which has been kind of a house of horrors for Tennessee of late here in recent memory. Tennessee led by 10 or so with a couple minutes left in the first half. Alabama closes that first half on a 12-0 run. Tennessee hustle play Jamon Mashack, hits the 3 in the corner, intercepts the pass, gives it to Zeigler to Adu, and that whole little stretch there when Tennessee kind of took momentum and took control of the game. Just huge for Tennessee. What more can you say about that Tennessee win at Alabama and, what it kind of means for the program and for this season looking ahead?
My immediate thought watching the game, seeing the result when it was over, was the same or a similar thought to what a lot of people have shared. Tennessee toughness. Tennessee was the tougher team. Tennessee kind of bullied Alabama in Knoxville. Bama was not ready for that. Alabama knew coming back home what Tennessee was capable of, and it tried harder, was better prepared to try to match what Tennessee was able to do, but in the end wasn't good enough. And a lot of teams around the country, most teams, are going to lose that game when they give up that lead, when they allow the run that you mentioned at the end of the first half. They're going to lose the game in the second half on the road in that kind of environment against a quality team. And that's okay. That's the way it works in college basketball. For Tennessee to not let that happen, to come back, to make enough plays. Tennessee didn't shoot very well. Neither team did, but Tennessee hit some key shots. Like Dalton Knecht didn't have a very good game shooting the basketball, but he hit a clutch shot late when he came back in when they needed it. Josiah Jordan-James stepped up, and guys did different things. Meshack plays winning basketball. We've talked about it at different times this season. Saturday was the best example, I think, to this point during his time at Tennessee, what he's able to do, including stepping up and hitting a couple of threes for Tennessee. That, to me, is why Tennessee's capable of going on a deep run this year, because in the same week, we could see them coming back needing to put up more than 90 points to beat Auburn, and then also needing to rely on its defense and make key plays late in a tough, hard-fought road win. They won in different ways in the same week against two tournament teams.
Josh, any concern about it? Again, we kind of talk about this 4-game swing here to end the regular season, 2-week stretch. Emotional win against Auburn at home. What you did on the road against Alabama Saturday night. You're staying on the road now at South Carolina, and we won't even mention Kentucky yet. I mean, these are big games to get up for. It's towards the end of the season. You're probably emotionally. I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to come out flat or anything. There's still a whole lot to play for. I mean, tournaments haven't even started yet. But my point is, this is a grueling stretch. How concerning is that this is like 3 of this 4 game stretch where Tennessee's kind of have to empty the tank, if you will?
Yeah, a little bit, just because this is so difficult. But I think a lot of teams have this conversation just in terms of what do we need to do to hold up to get where we want to go. So all the 1, 2, 3 seed teams right now, they're having similar conversations, even if the schedules don't match up. Like Tennessee's battling Arizona for number 1 seed potentially. Arizona's schedule to close out the regular season is not what Tennessee's is, so that's a difference. But they're still talking about, okay, how far do we want to go in our conference tournament? Would it be good to maybe lose a game so we're not trying to win this, to run this long winning streak? Like during the show on Monday, we got a couple of messages talking about, can Tennessee keep this running? One person messaged and said, I think we win out. I think we win the rest of the regular season, win the SEC tournament, and then go cut down the nets. And my thought was, well, obviously, if that does happen, that's incredible, and that's an all-time story. But do you want to try to pull that off? I'm not sure many coaches would want to try that. That's just talk about the pressure and everything that adds up. So you want to win the SEC championship, and you want to win the championship outright. So right now, the idea would be we'll go win the South Carolina game tonight and then go beat Kentucky at home on Saturday in front of your home crowd on senior day. Yeah, but if you bow out on Saturday in the SEC tournament, not the end of the world. You won the tournament a couple of years ago, so we're not talking about that streak of not winning it since 1979 anymore. So I think it's about trying to win this SEC championship, because an outright title for Tennessee would mean 2 since 1967. The only other one was in 2008 with Bruce Pearl. So you want to get that done. And I think the SEC tournament's somewhat of a throwaway in the conversation to get to the ultimate goal, and that's being prepared for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, when you won that tournament a couple years ago, the first time since 1979, was that 22, right?
Right.
Yeah. Did it help you on Sunday for Selection Sunday? No, it did not, because that decision was made on Friday and Saturday. I mean, again, you're always going to try to win the game. I mean, Tony Vitello's baseball team on Tuesday last year in Hoover was not trying to intentionally lose, but it worked out very well for them because they got pretty much a week's worth of rest, and then you went on that long run. It's a little bit different in basketball because, you're going to play on Friday, and you win one game, you're playing on Saturday anyway. I mean, you're just saving yourself a game or two. But, that Sunday game for sure does not help any SEC champion. It just doesn't. So I agree with you. Losing Friday or Saturday would not be the end of the world, in my opinion. Out the door here, Tennessee's new assistant coaches spoke to the media on Monday afternoon. William Inge, linebackers, and Darrell Sims, running backs. Takeaways, what were you impressed with from those guys? What stood out to you?
Well, they seem like fits into what Tennessee wants to be culturally, what they want to do in building the program still. That's part of the conversation. I think Darrell Sims fits the profile of a coach who is on the rise individually, and he sees Tennessee and the opportunity to coach the Vols running backs in this offense as the next big step in his career, and that can benefit both sides. Tennessee's program, with what he was able to do coaching at Cincinnati this past year, producing a top 10 rushing attack, and what Tennessee expects to be running the football. And then William Inge's experience, to me, just seeing his resume, his profile coming from what he did at Washington to join Tennessee staff, adding that kind of experience and helping replace quality coach in Brian Jean-Marie, seems like a really good fit as well. So when I looked at their names and didn't really see an obvious connection with Tennessee staff, then there had to be another reason. I think that was kind of on display. The energy that they bring, the experience that Inge brings for what he has done in his career, and how valued he should be, not just in helping develop the linebackers, but in what Tennessee's defense wants to be this year. I think both coaches were quality hires for Tennessee.
Yep, at least looked the part in front of the microphone the other day, and of course we'll get a better handle on these guys when we get out there and see their position groups in spring practice. Hey, Josh, what's coming up on the show throughout the rest of the week and on the newsletter, the Josh and Swain newsletter on Friday morning?
Yeah, so we continue this Tennessee basketball talk. Ron Slay, the Slay Ride on Tuesday. Had him yesterday. He's always a big hit if you want to go back and listen to that conversation. So a lot of hoops, but spring practice is right around the corner. A lot of talk about Tennessee football, this baseball team, what it can do. And if you check out that newsletter, it's free. It's a quick read every Friday morning into your email inbox, joshandswain.com, if you want to subscribe there, or in the link that Eric provides.
Yep, that link is in the show description of this show right now and every show as well. Locked On Vols, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. He's at Josh_Ward on Twitter. Josh, appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
You got it. Thanks, Eric.
All right, and that is going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols here on a Wednesday. We'll come back. We'll talk about everything Tennessee and South Carolina on tomorrow's show. Big thanks to you guys for joining the show and getting ready for this basketball game with us here on Locked On Vols. Subscribe for free, download for free wherever you get your podcast, wherever you listen, and of course on the YouTube channel as well. 30 minutes or less, it's your number one stop every single day for Tennessee football coverage right here on Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys.